If I stand?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. I like to stand when I speak. So let's see. Here we go. So I was really pleased to meet Juha. I worked for Codenomicon for 2 years, and how many of you have heard from Codenomicon? Go to the first slide. We're way. Here we go. So when Codenomicon is an Olu company, and now it's been acquired by Synopsys, and I've gone from a 120-person company to a 10,000-person company. I remained on board, and I still continue to work with my great colleagues in Finland. And I have to say that of all the people I've ever worked with, the Finns are by far my favorite. You know, nothing against any other nation, but I just love working with the Finns, some of the most intelligent people in the world. And of course, the Codenomicon was a result of the Protos project, which Juha started with the founders, and we've done quite a bit of work. How many of you have heard of Codenomicon? So Codenomicon's big claim to fame is the heartbleed bug, right? Have you heard? Any of you heard of heartbleed? So heartbleed was as many have called it, one of the biggest bugs in history. That's debatable, but it certainly is a big problem and continues to be today. And it's what got us on the map for a lot of organizations. And it's a zero-day bug, and it was discovered by implementing a feature in our flagship product called Defenses, which is a fuzz testing product, which looks at malformed inputs. And it's very interesting because these are true what's called a zero-day vulnerability, or a vulnerability that it's never been discovered before. Of course, once it's been discovered, it's no longer a zero-day, but there's that gap of time that people have to react to it. Almost a year and a half later, people are still dealing with heartbleed, and will probably be dealing with it for a very long time. So zero-day vulnerabilities are a very big problem, and unknown vulnerabilities are a big problem. But known vulnerabilities are what I would consider a huge problem. And I was only tangentially interested in this application that we created several years ago until I started looking at this data in more detail. And this is an application we have which does binary analysis. It looks at applications, and as Shaquille mentioned earlier, when you look at a product today, approximately 10 or 20% of the code is native, and somewhere between 80 and 90% or even more is third party. So we actually took, here's an example of a medical system. This is a system which multiple devices in a hospital connect to, and when we ran it through this test, we found 1,683 known vulnerabilities in the application, 378 of them which are just in Java, okay? Just in the Java runtime. And we started looking at other applications. I downloaded this control system from the internet, and this is actually a common control system that's used mostly throughout Europe, airports and water management systems, and it's a huge industrial control system company. And they've got over 20,000 licenses worldwide. I got this information from their website, and they actually list a lot of their customers on the website, which is really alarming to me because we found over 700 exact match vulnerabilities, again, over 374 just in the Java runtime, and over 150 of those which scored critical in the NIST CVSS database. Are you familiar? Is anybody familiar with the NIST vulnerability database? So critical is when you say critical, what we really mean there is that it can be executed remotely with no authentication. And just in Java, there's over 150 ways to do this. My colleagues here, and some of you may be familiar with a free tool you could download from the internet called Metasploit. You ever heard of Metasploit? If you know the IP address of a location, and you were to just simply point Metasploit at the location and just randomly start using Java exploits that are found for free in this tool, you would probably be able to take over the control system that I'm showing you here, which is, of course, a very serious problem. So I gave this information, and the numbers were interesting, but when I started graphing the data, and if you look at the horizontal axis, that is the date of the oldest known component to the newest known component, and then the vertical axis is actually the number of vulnerabilities, and we look at it over time, and about 2012, we see this huge inflection point. That's called the hockey stick, by the way, in US terms, right? Where you see that all of a sudden, the number of known vulnerabilities affecting this particular product skyrockets. And it's over a 1,000% increase between 2012 and 2014. The three circles there actually represent release dates of the software. So you could see here between 2010 and 2012 that there was a little bit of an uptick, but look what happens between 2012 and 2014. And when I went, and there's a friend of mine works for this company, and I gave him this information, and I said, what happened here? And he did some research, and he said, we just weren't looking. We just weren't looking. And I said, why? He said, because we don't have to. Nobody makes us do it, right? And so I did the same thing with the medical device, because I wanted to know, is that actually unique to that specific device, or is it something that can be found in other devices? I have a lot of these graphs, by the way, and limitations of time only allows me to show you a few of them, but what I wanted to show you is that this is not unique. So when I started talking to these software companies, I started to say, it's really important that you actually pay attention to these things and that you try to fix these known vulnerabilities in your software before you release them to the market, and actually, hopefully, over time. And one of the things that I started to do in the US is I said, look, why can't we actually have a software bill of materials that we could give to customers, okay? That we could give to people when they buy an application so they could know what they're consuming. Because if you think about it, everybody talks about risk management, but do you have the information that you need as a consumer to actually make a risk-based decision? We do require it for food in the United States and actually all over the world. Why not require the same thing for software? Does that seem reasonable to all of you? Well, it does to me. When I went to the software industry and I tried to actually go through Congress, huge pushback, huge pushback. They give us all kinds of reasons. They say we already do this, and I said, well, if you're doing it, you're doing a really bad job, okay? And you're putting us at risk. And ultimately what the problem is, that software is the only industry that can exempt itself from all liabilities by simply stating so in the license agreement. Have any of you ever read the end user license agreement that you click through? I'm going to paraphrase what it says. It says, use the software if you like, use the software if you don't use it if you don't want to, but either way, if anything goes wrong, you can't sue us. And if you don't agree to that, it doesn't install the software. Well, I think that may have been a really interesting novel approach 30 years ago when we didn't rely on software to survive. But today, we can't do anything without software. I was at the store the other day, and they said we only accept cash because our software machine is down. So if you had a credit card, you couldn't buy anything. Have you ever encountered a situation like that, where software doesn't work and nobody can help you? Happens all the time now. So what's interesting is when you talk to these software companies, what they're really saying is, we don't want to know about it, we don't want to tell anyone about it, we don't want to fix it, but we still want you to buy it. And I really don't think that's reasonable. The chief security officer of a very large security company, okay, recently posted a blog post, and it created this whole Twitter meme where she basically said, hey, if you're scanning our software, you're violating the user agreement. So not only do they not want to actually provide you the information, but they want to actually accuse you of violating the license if you do your own testing, right? So that's like saying, hey, if you go to if you buy food and it makes you sick, you're violating the agreement with the food producer if you go to the doctor, right? I mean, so insurance, cyber insurance. Cyber insurance is a big deal right now, okay? Cottage healthcare systems in California got breached, and they ended up putting in a claim for a class action lawsuit for $4.125 million. The company that insured them, Columbia Casualty, went back to them and said, you failed to follow minimum requirements. And because you failed to follow minimum requirements, we are countersuing you and we want to collect the money back from you. However, if you read the minimum requirements, it's impossible. They said you have to audit third parties. You have to perform due diligence. If the software manufacturer doesn't want to provide you with the vulnerability information and the information you need, how can you do this? It's completely impossible. So any of you have cyber insurance policies? You think you're covered? Think again, right? Because, insurance companies are saying, hey, we're not going to pay. So we recently partnered with Underwriter Laboratories. We tried to go the legal route. Underwriter Laboratories in the United States of America is a testing organization. They're setting up a cyber assurance program. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people to voluntarily submit to having their products tested. Interestingly enough, we've gotten a lot of interest in the U.S. from the automotive industry, who, as many of you know, recently faced a very serious situation in cybersecurity, and hopefully would solve the problem. But I think ultimately what I really want, what I want us all to understand is it's really within our power and control to put pressure on the software industries. We have to start asking for what I really want to call, and I love this forum because of what we're talking about, we have to ask for what I want to call a cybersecurity bill of rights. We should all have a cybersecurity bill of rights. We should have minimum things that we should require organizations to provide us as consumers of the software that can give us some level of assurance or the information we need to make a risk-based decision. I thank you very much.